Hello and welcome to a very special live edition of Higher Ed Live. It is Wednesday night. I know, what are we thinking? Well, we are live because we got to talk about Facebook and the recent changes that they have going on. Thank you guys for tuning in and bearing with us. It's a Wednesday night, so I'm a little off schedule, kind of trying to catch up, make this happen. If you don't mind, send out a link, maybe a little tweet, let people know it's higheredlive.com/live, hashtags higheredlive. Share the love, let some people tune in. I want to have a conversation. In the meantime, if you do not know, my name is Seth Odell. I'm the host of Higher Ed Live. We're a live weekly web show all about the world of higher education. We're all about professional development, digital development, professional empowerment. We're all about a lot of things, and tonight we're all about Facebook. And I'm excited to dive right in. We usually do a little thing called the Weekly Five. Unsolicited shout out, not tonight. We're going to dive right into all those things. But first, we do have one thing to say, and that is just a very quick thank you to our sponsors. Higher Ed Live is sponsored by Integral, the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. Be sure to check out their webinar series on how they can help you leverage Facebook to increase yield and retention. That happens this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Word on the street. Switching to Wednesdays next week. But we're sending a tweet out. Actually, we just did with a link to that. Guys, we're talking Facebook. These guys are Facebook. We're talking Facebook apps. You better know what Integral is all about. Also, big shout out to Omni Update, the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS OU campus is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community to boot. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in customer satisfaction in the 2010 EDU Guru survey. So if you need a CMS, check them out at omniupdate.com. And in case you can't spell OmniUpdate, but you better be able to, I'm sending a link out right now via Twitter, so check that out. And we got one more. I'm very happy to say we are also sponsored by Scavenger. That's right, the Higher Ed Live is sponsored by Scavenger, a Google-funded mobile game about going places, doing challenges, and earning points. Recently, a senior at Western Washington University was able to use Scavenger to engage local businesses and his whole community all by himself, on his own, through a very cool and simple campaign. Check out the story of what he did. It's pretty cool to see our students utilizing social media as this guy did. I'm going to send out a link out in just a minute, so check that out, and thank you to Scavenger. Guys, Facebook, lots of changes going on this week. I'm going to be displaying all the tweets that you have coming in all night, but let's just get right to the point and bring on our guest for the evening, Patrick Powers. Welcome to the program. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you for joining the show, man. You are back once again. If you don't know Patrick Powers, get on Twitter and follow him, but it's Patrick Powers. He's the Director of Digital Marketing Communications at Webster University, patrickpowers.net. And let's just pull up and showcase that Twitter handle right there, guys. So check that out when you can. Patrick, man, thank you for coming on the show today, dude. Are you ready to talk Facebook and talk Facebook fast?
Oh, I'm ready to talk Facebook fast. Not as fast as you. I've had 0 Monster Energy drinks, but I'll try to keep up.
Hey, I have had no Monster Energy drinks either. You know, I'm just ready to go, amped on life. It's a Wednesday night, and I'm excited.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Hey, you know, we're just gonna make it happen. So, Facebook, guys, right? What are we talking about? You know what's been going on. Lots of changes, lots of things happening with Facebook this week. And we're going to break them all down and talk about what it means for marketers, because a lot of the focus has been on what it means for the personal use, for the profiles, for individual users. And not going to lie, it's been pretty cool. It's cool to see what's going on. But there's a lot of implications for marketing on Facebook. A lot. And not all of them have been getting headlines this week. So we're going to be diving into that and really kind of hitting home what's been happening. So first off, obviously, if you guys know that this week Facebook held its F8 conference. It's this big annual conference where they really always announce lots of different changes. And, you know, Zuckerberg was out there making a lot of big announcements. But a couple things before we even dive in. 800 million users on Facebook now. 800 million. Pretty amazing. And 500 million visits in one day was a new record that they hit, which is pretty unbelievable. So, as Patrick and I were talking about this before the show, 800 million users is pretty amazing. I think we all agree they're going to be pushing really fast to hit that 1 billion mark. But as you said, Patrick, what the changes that have been announced show that the focus is definitely not just on growth at the moment.
Right, yeah, I think, you know, you kind of talk about, I just see this push into 1 billion users. And yeah, I think that'll be a big day, and Zuck will come out and look uncomfortable in front of the cameras and say, yeah, 1 billion visitors, 1 billion users. But what I really see is, you know, kind of what they've been talking about is, you know, the social layer upon which the web is built. You know, for so many people now, Facebook is the web, right? That they say, I'm just going to go and Facebook that, or you know, it used to be Google was the web. Before that, AOL was the web. You remember when you dial up and you hit any keywords? You know, for a lot of users, Facebook is the way they navigate the entire World Wide Web.
Yeah, I agree. It's become bigger and bigger, and I know it's been pretty impressive, exciting to see stuff. So first big thing that came out that we're talking about is timeline. I think most folks have been following along, kind of have an understanding of what timeline is. Timeline changes your profile entirely. It's essentially, the idea was that in the past, when you put up status updates or photos or videos, these things were lost pretty quickly. As soon as it kind of fell off your page, it was gone. And what Timeline does is it totally changes the idea of a profile entirely. And it's just really, really interesting. It allows you to put milestones in your life, scroll back through year. It self-selects automatically top stories and events. You can add pivotal points in your life. On a profile level, clearly this is a humongous change. And I don't know. I was actually really excited about it. I was surprised. It was really holistic. This of the change they announced was really exciting on a user level. I don't know. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, for the user, I love it, right? I think it's a cool interface. I think it's a great idea. I don't know if you were like me and you went back in your timeline, you're like, oh, whoa, I can't have that up there.
Yeah, oh, yeah, believe me. I went up back to 2005 and was like, delete, delete,
right,
delete.
Right, I can't have that stuff up there still. So you're going in, you're deleting, you're hiding, and then you're going in and adding things, like I added the day I got married, I added the day my kids were born. I don't know why. Who's going to go back and surf and look up that information? But I put it in there. And I think that's, the genius of what Facebook did is that it gives another reason for people to load content, right? And, it all comes down to this, right? The money. And the more content that you put in there, the more information that Facebook gets, the more targeted the ads can become, the more, the better the research on user behavior. So it's a scary proposition from a marketing perspective. But from a personal perspective, someone who uses Facebook casually, and I think it's clean, I think it's organized, and I do like it.
Cool. Yeah, so. I agree. We got a quick question that came in from Moonball. Do you know the resolution of the image that goes on the top yet? I believe you're talking about the timeline pages. If so, it's 851 by 315 is the pixel resolution for that. So random fact. But again, that's just your personal page. So I think the question was looking at pages. Pages haven't changed yet. That's a big thing we're going to be talking about. That timeline is for personal profiles, not for pages. Now, changes are coming to pages. A lot came this week that people didn't notice, but they're not glamorous. They're not glitzy. But sticking on timeline, what does timeline mean for marketers? Here's a question that I'm going to put out there. I don't think, you're going to disagree with Patrick, I really don't think it makes sense for marketers to try and get into somebody's timeline directly. I mean, timelines are important, but how much traffic are timelines going to be getting? I mean, you want graduation to be in there. You want these moments to be in there. But my question is, can you actually have a campaign where you're encouraging someone to add you to their timeline, add this pivotal moment? I'm not sure you can, and if you can, if it's worth the resources, rather than just making sure they had a great experience and hoping that they do that on their own. I don't see any marketing value in trying to get in someone's timeline. If they're going to put you there, if they want you there, if they want a milestone with your institution or not, right?
No, but here's the deal. You kind of shot yourself in the foot when you started, when you say, oh, well, you're not going to drive much traffic there. The timeline's not going to get much traffic. Yeah, I think that's true. But is it really all about traffic? At some point it's about building affinity with your institution. If you're in higher ed, building affinity with your brand. And I think if you look through the timeline, the things that you see are the things that they care about the most, the things that are most important in their lives. And if I'm scrolling through my friend's timeline, I see the kids' births, I see the wedding dates, and then I see, graduated from Webster University. What better of an endorsement can you get than that? It's going to be more than just, oh, I attended an event, or oh, I took a tour. These are small, trivial things, but, when you really connect some of those big life moments, with your brand or with your institution, I think there's incredible value there. And it's way more than just the traffic that might fall upon that particular timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Amy Mengel says, let me pull this up. Let me see how fast I can get this pulled up and displayed for you guys real quick. Want to showcase what you guys have to say tonight. So hold on one second.
Yes, Amy Mangle, she's got my back. She says, yes, you can get pivotal life.
Yeah, here we go. Let's get that queued up. Sorry, I wasn't. Yeah. Oh, yes, you can get pivotal life events into someone's timeline, branded life events. Okay. I want to see it to believe it. I think that, personally, I think you should spend more time just making that a pivotal life event that someone wants to put in there, but I'm not going to disagree. I'm really not. We'll see.
Right, yeah. And it does boil down to that, right? You do have to have those pivotal life events.
So again, my point is, day one, if you're a marketer and you're wondering, I don't think timeline is what you have to worry about. Let me put it that way. Day one right now, timeline you should be using as a individual. If you don't have it yet, they're rolling it out, but you can get it just by signing up as a developer. It might be out already, so fool around with it. It's cool, but there's some other things I think we should be worried about. And like one of them, for instance, is the stream. This is where some big changes happen, that they've merged top stories and most recent essentially into sort of one new shared column. And it looks kind of like this, where it says top stories, and there's that blue button over on the left, and that indicates it's a top story. And then on the top, you see 36 more recent stories, so you can click it. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here in the fact that they've merged these. So you, as a user, you can no longer select one or the other. I'm going to drop the first bombshell. Ready for this? As a page, there's no guarantee you're going to show up in most recent, even though you're putting out updates. Now the way it's set up now, that even if you're a Facebook page and you send out a status update, there's no guarantee it's even going to make it to most recent, because everything doesn't make it to most recent at this point, because Facebook has built in this idea that there's going to be so much going on, which we'll get into about the ticker and other things, that you just can't share everything in the mainstream. So they're literally making that, there's now 2 hurdles you have to get to be a top story. As a marketer, we all know, like, okay, you guys want to have a top story on Facebook. A top story on Facebook means more people are seeing it, more people are going to be able to comment, engage. It's a snowball effect, right? It's kind of like a mini thing going viral, because the more people like it, the more it's on top stories, the more it appears to people, and it grows. But before you can even make it to a top story now, you need to make sure you can make it to a most recent posting before everything made it in. And that's no longer the case. I don't know, Patrick. I think that's huge. I think that's a big deal.
No, that is big. It used to be, 3 years ago, it was enough just to have a page, right? Just to start a page, because not a lot of brands were there, not a lot of institutions were there. And so it was enough just to show up to the party. Okay, well, the party now has 800 million attendees, so it's not enough just to be there. You've got to stand out, and the way you do that is by having that content that people like, having that content that people share, and really having awesome content. I did a blog post last week, and the title was "It's more important now than ever just to be awesome." And I think that's kind of trivial, and I probably overuse the term, but it's true. It's not enough just to post off, list your events on your Facebook page. I don't know if you want to reminisce about the days when you could just spam all your followers just by putting event after event, and here's the deadline for this, here's the timeline for that.
Yeah.
It's Facebook's made it very clear this is not what this is about.
And so what does this mean? Interesting stuff with the feed again. So the great comments coming. Okay, that news story stream strategy is weird. The news feed now has a bouncer, basically. Yeah, that's actually true. Very interesting, right? It literally means now that there's a bouncer saying what can and can't get in the stream. So it's very interesting.
Right.
And this
goes all the best looking people get in.
And like you said, Patrick, you're talking about, it goes back to the fundamentals of you want to be awesome, you want to do good things. It also goes back to understanding the fundamentals of Facebook. And this is kind of where, I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of people aren't doing their homework. This is something, I'm going to be sending out a link in a minute if you guys want more information on this, but I was talking with Amy Mengel over at Read Media today, and Read Media is an example of people that really do their homework. They understand things like Facebook's edge rank, which is something that I'm familiar with, not everyone is. Which is literally sort of the algorithm of how things become a top story, and it's essentially 3 categories: affinity, weight, and time. Time is, how new is it? Weight is what is it? Because not all content's the same. A status update, it won't do nearly as well as a photo or as video. And then affinity is who you connect with that's connecting with that content. So if it's someone that you connect with closely on Facebook that's commenting, it's much more likely to push up. Because this is obvious, but it should be noted, like a top story for one person isn't a top story for somebody else. So how do you get this? How do you do this stuff? There's a couple things. One, you're going to have to post less. And this is a thing for a lot of people. A lot of the statistics that I'm seeing out there are showing that a half a dozen to at most a dozen posts a week that are really good are a lot better than putting up 5 status updates a day. Because the problem is you're going to turn yourself into essentially a spammer. And you're right. Facebook Stream now has a bouncer, and it's essentially a spam filter, and it's catching you if you keep putting status updates. If your strategy now is majority text status updates without a huge level of engagement, I think you are going to be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, here's the problem that I always have a little bit of problem with the statement you just made, is that I always hear people saying, oh, you need to post 3 times a day, or you need to post 2 times a day, or you need to post 5 times a day. I don't think there's any number. I never tell anybody how many times you should post a day. You should always, before you post anything, it's like, how many people are going to like this? How many people are going to share this? Is this even worth sharing? And if the answer is no, don't post it. If you have 10 things that people are going to share in the course of a day, post 10 things by all means.
No,
you're going to get the top stories.
I agree with you, but there's a story in there, which is that if you know it's not going to get engagement, you can't post it. And when I'm looking at this stuff now, and I'm looking at EdgeRank, and I'm looking at the way they're doing top stories now, I do think people have the potential to do, if they're doing a bad job, to get caught even more. Now, I'll say the stats that are out there now are showing there's no real difference in impressions yet or anything, but I'm just saying, one of the big testaments here is a fundamental thing, which is if you are running Facebook for your company or your institution or your college, wherever you work, and you're in the position now where your boss can send you an email and say, put this out on Facebook, and you don't have the chance to say no, that's a real problem. And that happens. That happens in higher ed a lot. Put this press release out on Facebook. You have to do it. This is the kind of event.
Or they put in their plan, post 5 times a week on Facebook.
Yep. You know? I agree, exactly. And I think that this F8 to me this year is kind of a line in the sand that, like, if you don't have an engagement first strategy, you're in some serious trouble. And it's not too late to do that. And you can do that, but you have to do it by thinking critically. I'm going to go ahead and give out one freebie to everybody right now, one tip on how to get insanely awesome engagement on Facebook. What statistical amount of your fans do you think actually make it to your page on a given day, right? Not a lot. The majority of people that engage with your content engage with it in their stream. So here's the question, though. A lot of the times you're just saying something to them. You're sharing information with them. But why don't you ask your audience something? And I don't just mean a random poll of how many people here are alums or anything else. There's an amazing example called Hidden LA. It's a blog in Los Angeles. And what they do is people post on their wall, and they post questions about Los Angeles, and then they repost the questions in their stream. It's brilliant. So if you work at a college and a freshman says, I'm new on campus, what are some great things to do on the weekends? Or what's your favorite restaurant in Westwood, if it's UCLA where I used to work, right? Instead of leaving that on the wall, you should take that question and post it in your stream and say, Freshman Billy wants to know, what's your favorite restaurant? I guarantee you, by allowing your community to service your community members, you're going to get much better engagement. And you're doing it because you're actually reaching them by taking it off of the actual wall, the page wall, and putting it into their streams. I think reposting questions and redirecting it is one great way that, even though it's text-based, you can get a lot higher engagement.
Yeah. You know, there was a great question on Twitter that Moonball threw out there was, how do I tell people no? I get this a lot. Post this now, it's important. How do I tell them no? And I think that's the whole reason for Facebook Insights. You can see the impressions and you can see the feedback that you're getting from individual posts. So if you're getting from administrators, from your boss, from your higher-ups that say, post this now, you can track those individual posts and you can show them the data that show, these urgent posts that you had to get out there. No one saw them. No one shared them. No one gave any feedback on them. This isn't the place for that.
I love it. I cannot agree enough. Arm yourself with data to take down poor requests.
I wish we could do a high five.
Wait, ready? Nice. Awesome. That was the first ever Higher Ed Live high five.
That was good.
Many more to come. That was really good. So, I mean, the stream, the big thing to know is engagement up or down with the new stream. We don't know yet, but it's the classic example. If you're doing the right things, you're going to make it there. But I would say this, when we're talking about data, don't just measure, again, to arm yourself, get your arsenal for your boss, but you need to really look at your engagement levels, because if you're not making it into most recent, you can't make it into the top stories. Unless you have insane traffic on your page, which almost none of us do. Most people are seeing your content in their stream. So if you're not even making it to their stream, you're kind of DOA. So this is just a really good time to fundamentally think about that stuff with the stream. I think that's a big change. It's too early to tell, though, if the numbers are going to make it a change. If we're still getting the same engagement in 2 weeks, maybe it's not a big deal, but I really am going to be tracking that one closely to see what's up.
Yeah. You know what I love? I love the bouncer analogy that was thrown out there.
Yeah.
Right? Because not only does it allude to the fact that, only the best looking people get into the show, right? But there's always a back way in. You can slip the bouncer $20 and you can get in. Yeah. And you look at sponsored stories, and that's the way to get in. If you're going to slip the 20 to the bouncer and still show up on someone's page.
Hey, you know what? We're going to skip right ahead. We're talking about sponsored stories. Big thing, too, guys. Advertising on Facebook. Exactly like Patrick Pryor said. If there's a bouncer at the door, don't be afraid to slip a 20. Patrick Pryor gets credit for that. I love that. That was really good. But it's a good point that you can game this if you're willing to pay up. And sponsored stories is an amazing way to do that. For folks that haven't done advertising on Facebook, you can basically do ads where you're bumping people off to go to an external website. You can do it, you're trying to drive them to a Facebook page. But you can do a sponsored story where you're essentially sharing a story from your wall, something you put out there, and you're putting it out on Facebook. And a lot of times you're showing it to friends of friends, and they're seeing their engagement. It's just a very social way to advertise. And the engagement numbers on that I've seen in higher ed are generally much higher. It's pretty interesting stuff. But you can pay to do that. So one interesting thing, I was going to jump ahead, that Facebook announced last week, I think it was. Let me see if it was in my notes. I know it was last week or the week before, but they've changed with ads that now you can actually put an appendage to track URLs for sponsored stories alone, and it's just adding this extra layer of actually being able to track what kind of traffic you're seeing from sponsored stories. Because at the end of the day, it's all about data. We're talking about that right now. But this is really kind of interesting that you can now use unique URLs essentially for sponsored stories, track the traffic you're getting to your site, and Facebook has finally kind of woken up and listened to saying like, okay, we need to make sure you know who you're getting from our site, where people are going to your page, and there's just been a lot of interesting changes in Facebook Insights lately. I really think they're kind of starting to learn the kind of data that we need to be able to invest. You know, if people are going to, I mean, Facebook has given out millions in free ad money to small businesses. You know, they're sending people door to door practically to Chamber of Commerce's right now. Facebook is finally waking up to realize that social networking is mainstream. Social networking advertising is not. And they're going to change that. And I think that was a big commitment that I saw in the last 2 weeks too. That again, maybe kind of missed some of the headlines, but it's definitely out there.
Right. And the way you saw, you know, in the past 5 years, you see people at universities or at big institutions, they get these people that are Google certified or they're, you know, SEO experts, and you start hiring on these people. You're going to start to see people that are Facebook experts, you know, that are Facebook certified, because it's just become that big.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's why you're seeing, you know, you have applications like Integral, one of our sponsors, who's actually essentially approved, and it's an approved developer by Facebook. You know, one of only 100. You're seeing there's books on Facebook marketing coming out. I agree, it's getting bigger, it's changing. So we talked about the feed a little bit, but so as I said, not everything is going to even be most recent anymore, and the reason for that is that Facebook essentially said, we're not just going to share what is up with you. We're going to share everything that you're doing. And this was a fundamental change of Facebook as well, which means it's changing what you're listening to, what you're watching, how you're engaging. They put partnerships out with Spotify and with RDO. So now if you're listening to music online, your friends instantly know. You allow this application access to your page once, and then every time you're logging into Spotify, which is, you know, a streaming music service, or RDO, which is a better streaming music service, $10 a month, unlimited music, I like it. Totally unsolicited shout out, but I love RDO. But if you're doing that, every song you listen to, your friends can see. And if you're watching on Netflix, everything you watch, they can see. And it's called the ticker, and you've probably seen it. It's in the top right, and it essentially scrolls instantly on what people are doing on Facebook. And it's kind of crazy. It goes really fast. I mean, I don't know if it's just for me, but I was trying to keep up with it. And, I mean, this thing, it's flying. I don't know. I thought that's where a lot of these stuff's going. I'll say this. I'll say a couple things. First off, I haven't seen pages come up here, but it might be because my friends don't engage with pages that much. I've seen a lot of group activity come up here. So that was interesting. But I'll say this. All group activity up until this point was giving me a notification, and it still is. So if I was part of a Facebook group, I'm getting a notification anytime anybody engages in the group, right? But now it's also coming through in that ticker. I'm curious, there's a really big overlap right now with the ticker and with notifications, and I would predict that there's going to be a notifications overhaul in the near future. I just think that that's something that Facebook kind of left largely untouched in the past week. And notifications is huge. Notifications is what pulls people back to your content. So I would watch that, but I don't know. What do you think about the ticker, dude? I thought it was, for me, it's kind of like overkill. I don't, it's just too much.
It is a little too much. I kept watching it today, and you look in the upper right-hand corner, you know, as it's flowing through, and I see the same person listening to 5 different songs in the course of 3 minutes. You know? I'm like, okay, well, I know that person's just sitting listening to music all day. But, you know, I don't see a ton of page activity in there. You know, but I don't see a ton of page activity anyway. You said it before, the content on the stream is where people engage. So I am seeing people liking content, people sharing content, and that does show up there.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I just logged, we're on the show live, right, obviously right now, but I just logged into Facebook to check out the ticker, and the top story that I took a snapshot of like 2 hours ago is still there. That didn't happen to me with top stories in the past a lot of times. Those top stories, the time waiting on that dropped quickly, so that's interesting. The ticker is a bit much for me. You know, the one thing I'm going to say, and this is kind of going to go off topic, Patrick, pull me back, is
all right, I'll pull you back.
As all of this stuff comes out, Facebook's done a great job in making it very easy for users. But the problem is the more burden they put on users for change, everyone hates change, but you change the stream, marketers will do it because it's money. But you have the ticker, and then you have timeline, and it's not incredibly easy to use. It's very smooth, it's nice, but it's not flawless. I do think that we're getting to a point now where the burden on an individual user to actually put in at least a little bit of effort to figure out what the heck's going on is kind of rising. People are going to have a little bit of a harder time maybe. I mean, we're relying on Facebook's algorithm to tell us what we want to see. And I think it's going to be a little bit harder to find what we really want if it's not there. I just think that with 800 million users, if you make Facebook feel like work, people are going to stop logging in. This may be more of a long-term prediction. I hope people have more in it, but even I have been kind of like a little overkill. It's so much sharing. I don't want to see all the music stuff. It's just too much this to me, I wrote a post called Fear and Loathing on Facebook this week, just kind of mimicking, is this the wave breaking? Is this the high, beautiful moment that we're going to look back on years from now and say, that's where the wave broke and rolled back? I don't know. Can society handle this much Facebook? Pull me back, man. Tell me I'm over.
Step away from the edge.
Okay, I'm coming back.
U.S. is just too much. I think people have such a heavy investment in Facebook. My mother has hundreds of pictures on Facebook. They've already invested the time and the effort to get to know the system and to figure it out. I don't think that adding a timeline and reorganizing where you're going to put notifications is really going to be too much work for people. But, I will agree with you in some respect in that, I see things like the subscribe button. Someone asked me, are you afraid that people are going to unsubscribe or they're not going to choose to see your photos? You're not going to see, from different friends. I said, no, because that is work, right? No one's going to go into every page that they've liked, should the subscribe button become available for pages. No one's going to get into all 150 friends that they have and set limits on what they're going to receive from each and every one of those people, right? Because that is work. If you don't like something, you just defriend someone or you unsubscribe from the page.
No, good comment coming in. You're saying if it becomes work, I bet slow death. There's no good Facebook alternative, and Google Plus isn't there yet. Totally agree with that. That's a good point. That this is on a personal level. I'm kind of feeling the recoil of like, okay, for me, this is just getting to an insane point where there's so much to do, so much work, but you're right. There's no alternative, and the reason people left MySpace for Facebook wasn't because Facebook was better, or even because Facebook was innovating that much. It was because there was actual competition in the marketplace. People had somewhere else to go, and then once the party moved, everybody followed the party. That's just the way it goes. Google Plus, we'll talk all about that. I want to do a show on it in the future. To me, it's not a Facebook competition. It is an unbelievable utility tool. There are some unbelievable things. People that are writing off Google Plus have not used Google Hangouts at all because there are some cool tools in there. But I agree. I'm not at all about to say now that we're seeing a mass exodus on Facebook at all. I'm just saying Yogi Berra said it best when he says, nobody goes there anymore because it's too crowded. Paraphrasing there.
I do think you and I both have to be a little bit careful. We are in Facebook all day, every day, figuring out things, clicking on buttons, getting into new groups so we can get the timeline first and see what's going on. I would venture to guess 98% of the users out there aren't like you and I and figuring this stuff out. So for the general user, you move my pictures around. Okay. But they're not trying to, market an institution, push a brand through this platform. They just want to see pictures of their grandkids or they want to, leave funny messages on their college roommates' walls.
I agree. But, like everything, it always follows a certain group. I'll be interested to see what happens in the next 5 years. It's not going anywhere, but, some people might. Sure. So, okay, that was a little bit off tangent. Patrick pulling me back to reality. Well done. But another big innovation that came out this week, again, another one that didn't get huge press, was the subscribe button. So this is interesting that individual users now, profiles, can essentially put subscribe buttons on your profile, and people can subscribe to your updates. And essentially, this isn't that far off from like a Facebook lists on steroids where you could share some things with the public and other things not. The idea is that public figures can put things out on Facebook where the whole public can subscribe to them, but they're not friends. And then they can still have their friend circle where they share their pictures of themselves at the party on the weekend and the kid's birthday and all these other things. And then all their professional stuff they want to put out there, people can subscribe. This is bigger for politicians, for world leaders, but I am bringing it up tonight because it's big for college presidents. I mean, an article came out, probably 6 months ago now. I would say Texas A&M, I think it was saying, Diane McDonald, I think her name is, she was writing an article about, the college president has 5,000 Facebook friends, and he hit the max. And once you hit 5,000 friends, you're done. And Facebook, up until last week, was saying, you better set up your own Facebook page as a person and get people to like you. But interestingly enough, that's not the way to do it anymore. Even though they haven't publicly come out and said, stop setting up Facebook pages as an individual, if you read their help section on Facebook, it essentially says stop using pages for an individual. It's really small text, but it says subscribe buttons as an individual is for public figures in place of using a Facebook page. And that's from their own language. And so if you have a college president that's out there, the idea is you want people to subscribe to them instead of setting up a Facebook page. Now, Patrick is about to jump in and say, who wants to subscribe to a president? And I agree, but I'm going to say this. Right. Who wants to like a president or a chancellor on Facebook in the first place? So I think subscribe's better, but it's still not perfect.
But if you read Diane's post from, the Texas A&M president who had too many friends, first off, one, what a great problem to have, right? But the whole reason the profile was set up was so that the president could individually message people. So the subscribe button really takes away that functionality. So why are you going to even have a personal profile in the first place if you're still going to be limited to 5,000 friends? If you can't use some of the features of that profile in terms of messaging them as individuals, what's the point of subscribe?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I just think
Yeah,
there's a change happening. I mean,
yeah,
I agree. If you guys want more information, check out, it's facebook.com/public-figures. Facebook.com/public-figures is where they describe all about how they want you to use the subscribe button, and then you can come back to Patrick and tell both of us if you should use it at all, or if you're going to,
right.
because I
But
agree.
don't you think it's funny though? The terms of service still say you can only have one profile per person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is the university president going to go through and clean up all the stuff they share with his family and kids across the country?
Well, I mean, that's why, well, at least with the subscribe button is like, subscribe, you're not friending them, so they only see what you put out publicly
right.
in the future. But I'll be honest with you too, understanding how subscribe works is really pretty difficult, because people can subscribe to you, and then also on top of this, there's another subscribe feature where you can subscribe to certain elements of your friends. If you have a friend who posts way too many pictures, you can essentially say, I no longer want to see their pictures, but I want to see their status updates. So now what they're doing is, I should say, subscribe is not just individual out, even though they make it look that way with the facebook.com/public figures. It's also a weird wannabe circles filter thing where you share some stuff and you can select what you want, and now you're like, I'll be honest, I'm gonna say this, it's still confusing. And Facebook lists was confusing too. I went up and set up a list. I put that together, but it was hard. That's still a big issue for Facebook. And the problem with that is they're doing it after the fact. It's different if you're a Google Plus and you're putting circles together now as you're building them. It's a lot harder to tell someone to go back and do that work. Because why? If you make it work, they won't log in. Honestly, they'll go back to drinking beer on the porch, because that can be more fun and relaxing sometimes.
Yes. So
that's the subscribe button. Patrick, tell me about Open Graph Apps, man. This is another big announcement that came out this week, and I think people wrote it off. People are like, oh, Facebook's talking about apps is one of the three big things they're talking about. Apps. And yet, I think most people in higher ed were like, okay, that's great for Farmville. I'm just going to kind of check out. I don't need to worry about that anymore.
Right, yeah. We've kind of talked about this before. I think apps is kind of the number one place where higher ed is missing the mark. Apps are not as difficult as you would think. It doesn't have to be something as complex and elaborate as Integral, say. An app can be something as an embedded video, an integration with your CRM, something simple that you're simply coding on your end and going through the process, filling out, creating an application to Facebook isn't that difficult. And the benefits are incredible, right? So apps show up in timelines, apps, are going to allow the Facebook gestures where you can change verbs and it'll show up in the feed and the ticker, sorry. I really just think that's a great place where growth is going to happen.
I agree. I think there's a lot of things you can do. I just love the idea of like a sports app where you can see the scores being displayed. There's a lot of creative things, but I guess the problem is that there's not a lot of higher ed institutions that want to invest the time or money to try something new and be creative. So I think you're not going to see higher ed doing apps, even though you probably should. I mean, you see a few. I mean, you see Studio by Purdue. There's examples of colleges or universities investing in technology development like that in general. That's apps for mobile phones. This is apps for Facebook. But I do think that there's going to be a space for vendors. Just one example, Localist is a calendar system for higher ed. They do interactive campus calendars. It's a total system. I could totally see them selling an app version, so that way when kids are on Facebook, in addition to actually going to your calendar on your site, they can have the day's top events, they can find out what information is going on. There's a lot of integration opportunities for vendors. So the reality is, I think it's going to be a vendor-led initiative, but there's a lot of opportunity for engagement, and if there's a lot of opportunity for engagement, there's an opportunity to make some money, so someone's going to smarten up and get in there.
Right, well, and I think there's a lot of utility, especially for students, that you could put into an application and integrate it right there into Facebook. I just don't see people, jumping to do it, because you don't see administrators loading these apps onto their own pages and saying, we've got to have this. Like you have people holding up a phone to a president and saying, hey, check this out. And then suddenly that becomes a thing that we need to get on board with. Apps can be just as important and the engagement levels can be just as high, but until you start seeing other people do it, it's hard to get people to be the first ones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you. So, what else do we got? I'm gonna jump ahead real quick before we get into the last minute. What really bottom line, what it means for pages, because that's really what we're all here for, right? It's Facebook pages. We're all admins on some Facebook page. We're worrying about something. Facebook messages. I'll just say this. It's time to revisit this one. Facebook messages. Remember, guys, the email killer. Because as it comes out, let me just say, Facebook messages is not going to change much of anything. If you may not have noticed, Facebook pages, we'll talk about in just 1 second, lost the ability to send a message to all your fans about 2 weeks ago. It's okay because your fans didn't read them anyway, and there was really no point in doing that. I logged in last week and there was 17,000 messages, and I'm like, what? No, thank you. I will never read that. So you lost the ability to message your fans directly a couple weeks ago. Nobody noticed because nobody did it because nobody cares. Because Facebook messages didn't kill anything. Kids just text each other. Let's be real here. Mobile killed everything, and mobile will if you want to get into that whole thing. But just want to bring up Facebook messages and mention that change about the pages, because guys, let's talk about really what does this mean for pages. Bottom line, we've mentioned some of this stuff. You're gonna hate me for this because we're 40 minutes in, but nobody really knows. I mean, we're kind of, a lot of this is open ended. What I'm saying is at the end of the day,
right? We think it might. We think it might mean something.
Exactly. Well, everything we're talking about tonight, we're talking about, it's weird. We're talking about how things may or may not impact things, and there's little elements that clearly make a big difference. You can't hit most recent necessarily anymore. There's certain, how does the ticker work? There's elements there, but at the end of the day, it's about engagement. It's about getting that stuff there. So clearly, we don't know everything, but there's still some stuff. I'll say one thing that's tangible. By the end of September, users are going to be able to see a friend activity tab on pages they like that shows that what's going on that page, what their other friends are doing. So do you guys know, if you ever go to a website right now, there's ones like CNN is using it, The Atlantic is using it, where you can see how your friends have engaged with that website. Facebook pages is going to have that same type of feel, except it's going to be the top stories on a Facebook page aren't going to just be random Facebook stories. They're going to be stories that your friends, people that you're connected with, are engaging with that page. Now, what does that mean all the time? Not necessarily a lot, but for colleges, it does mean a lot, because the majority of your fans, most likely, share a lot of other fans as friends. If you're a freshman or you're in school, all your friends are probably also fans of that institution. So that means when you go to a Webster University page, in theory, you're seeing what your friends are engaging with most on that page. And that matters on the personal level. So I think this is going to be by the end of September. You're going to see the friend activity tab on Facebook pages. I think it's an opportunity for deeper engagement, to be honest, because you're kind of instantly finding your friends have filtered this stuff for you already. So this is one element where I think it's going to be a really big boost for colleges, because if you're a student or you're an alumni, to be able to see instantly what your closest confidants are thinking about, engaging with, what they're saying with that page, that's going to make you jump in that much more likely. The more you jump in, the more likely that it actually becomes a top story out to your stream. It's kind of going to snowball. So I think that's actually a win, and that's a win that most people didn't kind of hear about.
Well, you know what, though, Seth? You don't even have to wait until the end of September, because there's tabs now where you can see friend activity on a page. You can see what your friends have done on that page or liked on that page. And I actually think it is going to become more important for head, because if you go across the country right now and you look at institutions that have people in charge of their Facebook page, traditionally it's 1, 2, maybe 3 people that are doing these pages. And I think people can fall into the trap of catering to one particular audience who they think might be viewing the page. Maybe they think that they're getting a ton of prospective students on the page. Maybe they think that they're getting a ton of alumni donors on the page. But you're going to quickly see through that friend activity what becomes the top news. Mm-hmm. And that those content managers and those content creators are going to have to start catering to all those audience if they're going to have content that sticks.
And I'll say, you are absolutely right. It does absolutely already exist as a tab on the side of the page. I just think you're talking about actually shaking up the stream itself, your wall. Your wall is not going to be simply what's in chronological order anymore. So, but I agree. The option's already there. It's just just removing the functionality, in my opinion, in a place that has more eyeballs. But you're right. And then there's also a quote that came in: the majority of my friends interact with useless content. Well, if that's the case, my first rule of advice is get better friends. No, I'm kidding. That's a really good point, though. I mean, that's why the problem with Facebook is that if you're
my friend,
if your friends don't like the same things as you or don't interact with the same things as you, this is going to be interesting. Facebook is testing a theory that you have the same interests as your friends, and that in general in life is, yes, absolutely true, but there's a lot of elements where you might not, and it's just going to put the burden on you as an individual to then try to bury what that person does so you don't have to interact with it. I'm sure people experience this if there's political differences with their friends, but that is a truth, that they're basing it on a fundamental idea of human society, that we surround ourselves with people that we share familiar beliefs with. And while that's largely true, I think it's going to be interesting, because the burden is going to be on the individual that's most bothered by the content to kind of manually kind of beat that algorithm and bury that stuff. So that's interesting. What else do we got? Here's one. Okay, another one that people didn't know about. Facebook pages, right? They increased the status text limit from 420 characters to 5,000. That's right, 5,000 characters. So I know what you're all thinking. Yes, we can finally put that entire press release on Facebook. No! No. What it means, you can now put, instead of 400 characters, 420, you can put 5,000 characters on Facebook. And my answer to you is never, ever, ever do that. Ever.
But what about if I have 4,900 characters?
Yeah.
Right?
My question, okay. I'm trying to figure out why the heck Facebook increased the character limit for pages. I'm trying to figure that out because I think are they catering to bad clients? Because it's just a terrible idea. I don't see how it increases engagement. If people want to read 5,000 words, they can go to your website. They have the notes feature. There's things you can do. Why did Facebook do it? I just think it's a big open door for bad engagement.
Right. This is kind of like writing for the web 101, right? You know, I always tell people, you know, if you're putting content out there on Facebook, 4 or more and they're out the door. No one reads more than 4 lines of content in Facebook. You know, if it becomes 4 lines of content, if it's 5 lines, it's a paragraph. You know, and if you actually sit someone in front of a computer screen and tell them, read that paragraph out loud, you know, it takes them forever. You know, they just don't read that way and they don't scan that way.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just hate that increase, and you should too. And if I ever see anyone give a 5,000 page status update, so help me. So help me.
I'm going to update my status tonight. With
you absolutely better not. So, okay, what other Facebook page changes happened in the past few weeks that people didn't hear about? It used to be that Facebook page administrators could only see per post engagements and impression metrics when viewing self-published items on their wall. Long story short, the metrics in Facebook are kind of changing, and you can see per post metrics and export them to Excel. And this actually means that you can see per post exactly what's going on for all of your insights. Some of the insights used to be you could see the per post engagement metrics, and then when you went back to Facebook impressions, it was comments, posts per day. Long story short, I'm not going to get into it. Facebook Insight stuff is really getting more detailed, and it's letting you export it to Excel, which means you can build some serious graphs and do some serious work. If you're relying solely on Facebook to tell you about the engagement on Facebook, I think that's actually a bad idea. I don't think you need to do all the manual homework yourself, but get this stuff out of it, get it in Excel, find a way to do it. You know, it's the same thing I'm doing with YouTube now, is getting the numbers out of YouTube, putting them into my own charts, tracking things myself, what's valuable to me. So that's just one example that if you're not doing that, do it. And if you're doing it, Facebook's giving you more information. That's only more ammunition. So I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Right.
So.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Agree more.
I won't.
Because you can't.
No, it's impossible.
Okay, so what else does it mean for pages? Here's my question. This is the big questions everybody's asking. If timeline was like the massive overhaul of the profile, is there a massive overhaul coming for pages? Patrick Powers, you're on the hot seat. What do you say?
Yes, I think so. You know, I think as people figure out, you know, and I think it's going to be user driven. You know, you see the timeline and what is important to people shows up in the news feed. I think pages are going to be run the same way. You think that you have a hard time giving up control of a page now? I think that's only going to increase in terms of how your page is viewed by others. It's going to be based upon how they choose to view it. Yep. You know, it used to be when negative news showed up on your Facebook page, you could just bury it, right?
Yep.
You know, oh, I'll post 3 things, falls off the bottom of the page. And similarly now, you know, if someone posts something negative, you're like, well, I'll just post something that's going to get a bunch of easy likes and that'll stick to the top and it'll fall off the page. I think that with the way that Facebook is going, the changes are really going to only benefit the user. And they're going to build stronger connections to what their friends did, what their friends liked. Yep. And control really is going to be up to the person on the other end.
I agree with you 100%, man. I think it's a really good point and definitely interesting for moderation's sake. And Mike Petrov jumping the gun on one of our last points and a really strong one. So I want to pull this up because this is one we were just about to talk about, Mike. So nice job with it. Let's pull it up here, guys. This one is the one you want to note. This is the one that your boss is going to ask about. Non-likes can now post statuses and comment on your page. Say what? That's right. People no longer need to like your page to actually comment on it. That is huge. If anything, that's probably, as Mike brings up, it's probably the biggest change, to be honest, because what does that mean, really? It means when you have a massive PR disaster, it means people don't even have to like your page anymore to go totally apeshit all over it. You need to watch your wall. This is going to change what happens on your wall. And I'm just saying, I mean, this is big. You're going to see questions and comments coming in from anyone. Prospective students that have a question, they don't have to like you anymore. People that hate you, they really don't have to like you anymore.
No.
It's not nearly as much about the like anymore, and it's much more about the engagement. But this is really big. Patrick Powers, what do you think, man? How big of a game changer is it that no one needs to like a page anymore to dive right in and have a conversation?
Yeah, not that big of a change. And I'll tell you why.
Okay, tell us why.
Right, because liking a page is trivial, right? If I'm really, angry at an institution, if I'm really upset with a brand, I'll go in and like a page. Because you know what? Because I know that's going to allow me just to blast you. I'm going to be able to put 5,000 characters in a status update and really let you have it, Okay, when I'm done with that, yeah, I can unlike you, just because I clicked the like button, the meaning of a like, I think is really watered down because it's a pretty trivial task to do. So while, yes, I think that is,
I got to agree.
Change that people need to be aware about, but I don't think it's, the end all be all.
No, I totally agree. And in fact, let's just pull up and give a little more credit to some people already. Just Amy Mengel from Read Media just jumping in on Team Patrick Powers right now. But even when brands did have a massive PR disaster, people would like the page just so they could crap on it. Absolutely true. And that brings a point that it's totally kind of trivial. I know Patrick's like, yes, win for Patrick. Good point, man. Right. All right. It'll still be a big conversation maker. I agree internally, but I think you're right. And then this brings up the whole gestures thing too. What is a like, and what are all these other things? It's changing, and I think Facebook gets that. I do think that's kind of why they're moving beyond the like. The like was an ends to a means. I mean, the like was getting them traffic. The like was getting people in there. But it's a lot more than liking things if Facebook really wants to be integrated into a web experience. It's not about liking something. It is about listening and reading and what are you doing, what are you watching, and all these other verbs. And that is, I think I give them credit for understanding that element because that is a very small point that needs to be. If you want to really be integrated and ingrained in the web experience, you need to really be able to embrace all those things.
Right. I do want to put a lot of my dad hat for a moment here. As Facebook gestures gets rolled out and people are changing verbs, I was on a couple of listservs this week, but people start discussing, well, what verbs are we going to use for the higher education experience? Are we going to use learn? Are we going to use explore? I suggest you go back and read, and I'll send out a tweet here, a piece by Michael Stoner about common sense and plain language. And it really is important what language that we use. If people are calling things academic programs, let's call them academic programs. Let's not call them learning, And I think that's where institutions will have to become careful, is that those verbs will become very important in terms of how you market your institution.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, man. So listen, Facebook, some big changes. Did we miss anything? Question to you guys, putting out there with the hashtag, question to Patrick Powers, guys. What else did you see this week, if anything, guys, out there that changes that came out that have meaning for brands? What are your thoughts, Patrick? Did we miss anything? Any big other points out there?
Let me check my notes. I think we've done a good job of pretty much covering it all. I think at the end of the day, really what we're talking about here is tactical changes. You got to change kind of maybe the way you post something or when you post something, But this really shouldn't change your overarching strategy. If your strategy is engagement, yeah, you might have to change the tools that you use or the ways you go about it. Mm-hmm. But this isn't an over, sweeping change in strategy in terms of how people are using Facebook, because it's always been about connecting with people and it's always been about the engagement, and that hasn't changed.
I agree, and that's a really good point, that when we talk about these changes, we're talking about what's next. How do you look at this stuff? How do you embrace these changes? There's kind of two things going on though right now that I'll say. The first one is the obvious one, which is it's about good content, it's about engagement, it's about doing things right. And that's a given, I think, at this stage. If you're doing social media poorly in 2011, and there's people out there that are, there's kind of no helping you. I'm not really throwing you a bone anymore. You're kind of on your own. But for the thing that I think, for the schools out there that are doing it well, I do think there is an opportunity to do it better than everyone else. And I'll just say this. With F8 and with what Facebook's been doing, I will say that they have really in the past, I'll give them the year, but especially even the past 6 months, past few months, past weeks, shared a lot of information about how Facebook works. And now that they're really trying to get small businesses on board to advertise, they're really kind of working to educate people, not on how to game the system, but on how to leverage it to increase your brand exposure, increase engagement, generate leads if that's your game. I will say that Facebook is putting out information out there that if you are into this, it's not just about doing it right anymore. You can do it really, really well. And I think that if you're into it, and if you have enough content and you have the right brand behind you and you're ready to do it, do your homework, because I think this is the time to shine if you're a marketer. Because I do think if you do your homework, you can outsmart 99% of the competition right now, because they're just going on Facebook and posting something they hope someone likes, and they're not doing the homework to think about it. I mean, just, one of many examples is geographical targeting in Facebook. Huge opportunity that so few schools do, that you can target by time zone, you can target by state. How that even implicates into most recent and top stories, that's something we need to look into. If you're willing to boil down onto that level, I think you're going to see huge success. So I think overall, if you're in marketing, be excited about this. Some people are all scared. What's this going to mean? What's it going to mean is you got to do some freaking work. And what's going to mean is you're going to have to out-hustle your competition. You want to be top dog, work for it. I think that this opportunity, Facebook is finally putting the information out there. If you haven't read through their help centers, if you haven't read through their advertising pages, I'm talking about hundreds of pages, videos, tutorials, PDF case studies for everything they do, for pages, for groups, anything that's connected to advertising. Facebook advertising has put up a plethora of information. And I actually think this is the timing is perfect right now for marketers, because the sample size has never been bigger. More people have never been there before. There hasn't been more information. The time is now to absolutely own Facebook as a marketer. It's just a matter of who's going to step up and do it.
Yeah.
Boom roasted.
Yeah, boom roasted.
So that's my thought. I will say this: it's the time for marketers, but is it the beginning of the end? No, it's not. But I will say I think there's going to be a dip in engagement. Maybe not statistically for our brands, but something's going to happen. This is a lot of work we're talking. This is a big pivot. Facebook is making an investment in the future. The thing I think is they made this change now because there's nowhere else for anyone to go. If they made this change at a point where they had somebody hot on their heels, which is likely not to happen for years, for a long, long time, then they'd be in trouble. I think a lot of this stuff was an investment in the future. Making these changes now when it's the right time, when people kind of have to do the work. The grandmother has to do the work because the grandkids' photos are there. As soon as their son leaves the grandkids' photos and decides to put them up anywhere else, or just go back to emailing because he's too tired of it, grandma's gone. But everyone needs to be on Facebook right now because the information and the friendships are there. Not everyone, but I'm saying the majority of that audience has a need to be there because what they really want is access to relationships. Right. And I think Facebook was really smart to hit this right now.
And I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. People have made that investment. People have loaded hundreds, thousands, millions of photos of their grandkids, college graduation parties. They've made that investment as marketers. It's our job to make the investment then to reach out to them. If they're providing that content out there and sharing with us and liking things that we do, isn't it incumbent upon us to, reach out to those people in exchange?
Yeah. Good question coming in. Is there anything changing for groups? The homework I did, I couldn't see much of anything changing for groups, and that I'll say is not because it won't change, but because I think Facebook is just literally spacing out the changes that they're making, and they're still tweaking things. I see changes coming to pages and groups. Groups is huge. I mean, I think in the past year, Groups has really proven itself as an incredibly powerful tool, but there's all sorts of things like the cap on the chat that cuts off, a lot of things. I do see a lot of those things being tweaked and changing. Biggest thing for me is, it hasn't happened yet, if they change the way the notification system works, that's when we're going to see some really big impacts, pro or con, depending on what they provide, in engagement. But until then, I haven't seen anything major at all.
Right. I'd also like to see some changes with document sharing in groups. You get that little document in Facebook where you can bold things and you can italicize things. That's about it. You can't load PDFs. You can't share.
Well, and this brings up the whole point of Google Plus. I mean, again, I don't want to get hugely into Google Plus, but Google Plus is one of the most unbelievably well-built utilities ever. And I'm not saying it's a social network. I don't log in to use a social network, but I'm just blown away at the collaborative abilities you have using it as a tool. I mean, there's so much you can do with it. And Facebook's dropped the ball on that. And now there's been rumors that Facebook's going to do more document integration. I mean, come on. They're literally, brother, sister with Microsoft. There's opportunities there. But there hasn't, I totally agree, been that kind of integration. I'm not sure why. I mean, my argument with Facebook and anything is the more they build, it has to be easy. Because, again, if it starts being work, people won't do it. At some point, you're going to log in, it's going to be too much. And while we're at it, why not, guys? Right? My prediction, there's going to come a point where there's going to be a real there's going to be tiers of Facebook, and not just basic little Facebook Lite. I'm talking about like real tiers where like there's basic user and then there's power user, and that's when you turn on all these things, essentially on buttons, where you turn on, I want document sharing, I want this kind of amazing group chat, I want these things, and it's going to be turned on, because if you dump all that on somebody at once, man, they're going to have no idea what to do. But I think if you make it like a step-by-step process, people can build into it. At some point, they have to do that, because I mean, the more features you get, at some point, it's going to be kind of overkill for the Joe Q public.
Right. And I'm always a big believer. It always comes down to money, right? And until Google Plus opens the doors for corporations and brands to have corporate pages the way they do in Facebook, and once those organizations then bring the money into Google Plus that they brought into Facebook and Facebook ads and customized and sponsored stories, you're never going to see it, become as big as it could.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, yeah, I mean, this stuff, I don't know, man, is the wave going to break? Not. This is a big time, I think, for marketers, but it all comes down to fundamentals. I honestly think it does. It's, if you're doing your homework and you're doing it right, and you're setting goals and you're measuring and you're actually using metrics to hold yourself to a standard and, hold yourself accountable, I think that's how you're going to win in this thing. I think it's an exciting time, to be honest. I think it's some pretty big changes. For brands, this is the tip of the iceberg. Do we agree with that? I mean, this is like incremental changes that are just like, extras being thrown out there. But I think the biggest thing for me is, not necessarily even making it into most recent really means there's a good chance that if you're putting out bad content, people will never see it. Right. It's interesting. Yeah. So, listen, guys, thank you so much for tuning in for this special Wednesday edition of Higher Ed Live. We are back this Sunday. Let me just put a quick plug. Finally, this show we tried to do last night, we're doing it now. Cell phones in the classroom with Richard Byrne from freetechnologyforteachers.com. Really, really hot subject. Really hot subject. Super controversial. I had no idea. People are jumping all over the place with blog posts. Should cell phones be utilized in the classroom or not? And this isn't just a matter of should faculty or teachers embrace it. We're talking big picture stuff on whether or not schools should be supporting it with software, who should be investing in it, what should be happening. So it's going to be a big topic. I'm really excited for it. Richard's a great guy. He's a Google certified teacher. He's a very cool, interesting man. So he'll be on. And then once again, guys, listen, if you have any more thoughts on Facebook, share them with the hashtag. I'd love to hear it. What does Facebook changes mean for marketers? It means a whole lot, and it means a whole little. Do your homework if you want to be the best, and if you don't, just ride the coattails of the rest, I guess. That's all I got. All right, Patrick, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Seth.
Cool. You listen. Have a good night, man. And
go Cards.
Go Cards, I guess. Why not? Okay, I like it. I'm new to New Hampshire. I don't have a team yet. Haven't embraced the Red Sox just yet, so I'll say Go Cards as well. Why not? And in the meantime, guys, thank you again. I am Seth Odell. This has been Higher Ed Live. We are back on Sunday, but head on over to higheredlive.com where we have archives of each and every episode. Coming up on episode 50 on Sunday. Very proud of that milestone. I hope you guys can make it. So I hope to see you on Sunday, but until then, take care, keep talking, and we will see you soon.